Hey guys, this is my Ogre Arrow plus Plague Spike build. This is a build that I played in the start of the season. I was able to finish first on the challenge ladder, the challenge XP ranking ladder twice, and we were able to also finish third on the damage ladder for Ogre Arrow with 180 million damage. Right, so I'm going to go over everything, but we're going to start with the leveling recommendations because this is a build that I believe requires a lot of gear and it doesn't perform on low levels of gear. So I do have some recommendations for builds for people to play first while they're waiting to craft all the gear for this build and then transition into it. I wouldn't recommend this build as a build to level as. I think there are way better options than this build. So skip this starting section if you're not interested in leveling recommendations. But after that we'll be going over runes, the Zodiac, the gear, the stat requirements, runestones, charms, which relics are the best to use. We'll also go into crafting and explaining how to craft the specific gear that you need for this build, which you do need specific gear, pierce count gears for example, and your scaling and options late game. There are multiple ways to build this build, not just the way I've built it. You can also build a crit variant of this build, and we'll show you some gameplay in 134 maps and 141 maps. So first off, leveling recommendations. This is a build where you really require, you need pierce count weapons, pierce count bow. You'll need mana gain on hit type gear, which is not really accessible until you have money to craft this stuff. So without those things, you have less damage and you have mana problems. So there are two builds that I really strongly recommend for leveling. The first one, which is my first recommendation, is a Plague Spike with Whirlwind. Plague Spike with Whirlwind. So Plague Spike right now is flying under the radar as one of the strongest clearing skills in the game right now. Basically, you would run Whirlwind here with a trigger to Plague Spike. Your Whirlwind would stay level 1 and you'd make it legendary, so you get rid of the movement dampening, but you would run Plague Spike as your clear skill, and then your third skill would be down here or on this side, sharing a few links, which would be Wheel Slash for single target on bosses. And this would be your leveling build. Doesn't really require anything, so your links would be Whirlwind, linked to acceleration, quick attack, regeneration, life gain on hit, and then your trigger, which would be linked to Plague Spike, parallel multi-shot or multi-shot, whichever you have. I prefer parallel multi-shot. Which one you prefer? These are the ranks you would also use: Killing Machine, Element Damage, Amplification, Strike. If you don't have access to those, and Piercing as well. Piercing is these two are the most important ones: Piercing, parallel multi-shot, and Pierce Wound on your Plague Spike. Otherwise, the other two you can switch in for any amplifiers you have, or additional poison damage if you don't have an amplifier. That would be your main setup, and then your third skill of it is Wheel Slash, as we mentioned. It would share a few links that were relevant, and that you just use that for single target damage. And then you would want to run a dagger. Dagger plus shield is the most one I recommend. Either dagger plus shield or some two-hand weapon. Dagger plus shield, because I recommend that because dual wielding in this game does not really benefit you that much. It just takes the average of your two weapons and gives you a stat weapon that is one-handed. It's not really good to dual wield in this game at the moment. So I recommend dagger, specifically dagger and shield. Why dagger? Well, you'll be able to use improved senses, which is one of the best defensive skills in the game, in my opinion. And when you've linked this skill to buff gain when hit, so it'll proc every time you get hit. This skill basically, even without any gear block expertise investment or dodge rate investment, it will give you crazy amounts of dodge rate amplification, and block. It'll basically, every time you get tagged and you have this up, you you'll basically dodge and block everything. It'll give you 40% block, 60% dodge, something like that. So really good defensive skill. Your offensive skill would be marksman, because you can use this with any weapon. It gives you pierce count and projectile damage. You run your regular shout setup. Your movement skills would be teleport and linked to disarm, and penetrating slash with use count linked in a 4 cluster. You'd also run poison area just for single target on bosses, but it shouldn't be a problem. That's your main setup. That will be one leveling setup that I do recommend. For the gearing, for the Zodiac, you would go brilliance. You would go to brilliance tree, which is up here, which is gives you mana convert and makes life easy for you because you don't have to deal with mana. So the brilliance tree, go through that and grab the elemental damage amplifiers, and so on. And you want to play non-crit while you're leveling, or if you're early into the end game, you definitely want to play non-crit, especially because your gearing, you want to be able to switch in magic find rarity gear. So here's an example of someone with a very similar setup that is basically a basis of what you would want to gear as, right? Did he get banned? I think he got banned. Either he got banned or, wow. Either he got banned or he's disappeared or his name changed, but he's not here anymore. That's bizarre. All right, I guess we don't have someone that example of gear, but basically that's dagger plus shield, and then you're running hybrid dodge plus armor gear and all slots, and your gear is pretty basic. Just get flat poison damage, percent elemental damage, attack speed. Get your attack speed as high as you can, because the faster you attack, the faster whirlwind triggers, and then just on your suffixes, your resistances, and health everywhere. Easy. Alternatively, if you don't want to play Plague Spike, I really recommend Plague Spike because it's far stronger. You can also swap this out as, you could play Toxic Flame if you prefer, but Toxic Flame has been nerfed multiple times. It no longer has a dot, stacking dot, and it only has 1 pierce, whereas Plague Spike, you can get 7 projectiles and potentially 12 projectiles. The reason why this skill is so good at the moment is you can get your projectile count up to 12 and your pierce count up to 7, and when you have 12 projectiles that all pierce, every time they pierce, it has a 25% chance to explode, and these explosions all overlap. So if you have 100 mobs and you shoot 7 projectiles through them, they pierce through every mob and explode multiple times, and all explosions overlap, just wipes out everything really fast. So that's my recommendation for a leveling build. Just one moment. I'm busy. Wait 10 minutes. Fucking got a phone call in the middle of the video. It's really cool. Anyways, they can just wait 2 minutes, whoever it is. That's the leveling recommendations. So now we'll get onto the Ogre Arrow build. So Ogre Arrow runes. You want Ogre Arrow as your main skill. This is awakened for +2 projectiles, +1 projectile count. With your trigger, you pierce count wound, awakened for +1 pierce count. Smash, persistence, you can awaken for double damage or triple damage as preference. Quick attack, and piercing. This is also one of the very important ones because you awaken for another +1 pierce count, and it gives you so much pierce count. So the way that this skill works is the more pierce count you have, every time the skill goes in, it'll hit the target, it'll pierce. If it has more pierce count remaining, it'll pierce through and it'll come back and track onto another target or track back onto the same target. So right now we have 8 pierce count, we have 9 with marksman up, so that's with 4 projectiles piercing 9 times, that's 40 hits every attack on a single target. And your trigger is Plague Spike with awaken for 2 extra projectiles, and this is linked to parallel multi-shot for more projectiles, killing machine, which gives you a damage amp and also gives you 10% movement speed amp, elemental damage amplification, and strike. Your movement skill is roll with disarm. Your offensive attack enhance is marksman, linked to time acceleration, increased duration, versatility, and enhance. I've triple linked between these three skills time acceleration because cooldown is really important for these three. And up here you have illusion arrow. This is the only purpose of illusion arrow is to be converted to lightning damage and then apply shock. You can also technically, if you wanted to add, you could add status effect for a stronger shock here. But this just gives you your shock for single target, and you have tenacious regen as your defensive skill. You can also use siphon life if you prefer that. I prefer tenacious regen because with a big health pool, this gives you a fast instant heal. The only way to really get an instant heal with a big health pool is potions don't give you that much health if you have 18k life. You have your shout here. You have your shout here with hushed shout, increased duration, and lingering shout. And you can maybe add two more links: time acceleration, shout of power, whatever you like. Buff activation when hit too. If you don't want to use your shout, you can just put it on buff activation on hit. Your seal is seal of condensed elements. The thing is, between seal of condensed elements, if you're wondering between this and seal of striking used to be better. Now seal of striking does not have an awaken option that is as good as this. So this has an awaken option which is 70% to 130% aura and seal effect. Basically at level 40 it's 300% elemental damage, but with this, if you get an average roll, it brings it up to 600%. Unfortunately I got a low roll here, 73, so mine's a little bit low, but if you get good luck on that, you should have a lot of damage from this, more than 600% at level 40. Supporting skills are poison area. This is just to throw down on the boss, makes the boss take 11% increased damage. Pretty good. And those are your skills done. Your runestone, sorry, your Zodiac's done. So runestones, I was lucky enough to find the aura and seal effect. Get this if you can. It's not that cheap though, if you can't drop it yourself. We have here a defensive cooldown recovery for tenacious regen, just whatever I could find and use in the right slot. And for Ogre Arrow, I have one here that has damage amplification with poison rune. So you can get these pretty cheap on auction house. If you can get it in the right position, it's worth getting one. So that's your runestones. Now to the gear. So as I mentioned earlier, you need specific gear for this build. Most important being the pierce count weapon and pierce count quiver. We've gone for speed and attack damage. You can also go for HP absorb if you like. The suffixes don't matter. All you want is a high roll of attack damage. If you can get poison penetration or poison damage, then it's great, but it's very, very hard to get with attack damage as those rolls are only 1% each. So that's your weapon. Something like this is what you want, but the pierce count is very important. I've tested without pierce count, having a same tier flat poison damage, and the pierce count bow won by a lot. This is your quiver. You also want a pierce count quiver with attack speed and HP or projectile damage or elemental damage, and the suffixes just whatever resistance or stats you want. I will go into crafting, explaining how to craft pierce count gear later in the video, so if you want to look at that, just feel free to jump to the timestamp for crafting section. For helmet, we've gone with Ancient Being's helmet because of a lot of HP amplification and flat health. For the shoulders, we've gone with Light's Portrait because of a lot of HP amplification and also gives you a regeneration effect. And once you have a lot of health, this regeneration effect is quite good. It's 500 health per second, as I have 16k life. Chest piece, you want a +3 attack damage prefix, and you want either double health or double gear dodge, gear armor rate, whichever you can get with high tiers alongside the the attack damage. Your suffixes, just resistances. You kind of do want to get chaos res alongside some resistances. If you want to get more advanced into crafting this, you can also go for a Hamal suffix double influence chest piece where you get 12%, you can get up to 11% health amp if you can manage to craft that. I will go into that in the crafting section later on in the video. Gloves, you want gloves with mana gain on hit at minimum, because you have so many hits. This will solve your mana problems, especially once you get close to 40 hits. That's 80 mana back every shot, which is huge. So that's the most important mod. The other mods you'll go for is, you know, your standard health, gear dodge rate, elemental damage, anything you can fit alongside with this influence mod. You can also go for a double influenced craft like I have here with attack speed amplification on the suffix. I'll go into that later in the crafting section. Boots, you want projectile damage, movement speed, and either health or strike damage, which is a influence craft. I'll also explain that in the crafting section. Suffixes, you want attack enhance, rune effect, some chaos res or random elemental res. For your amulet, you want the most important mod on this amulet is your flat poison damage. You want this as high a tier as you can, and then alongside that you get either health or elemental damage if you're lucky enough to roll it as well. I'm not sure if you can get projectile damage, I don't think you can, but those are the main stats you want in the prefix. On the suffix, you want any resistances or stats that you need to maintain your stats to use your skills, and later on you want to go for this damage amplification using enhanced skill rune level influence mod. For the belt, we've gone with Hilt of Life of Death. This is one of the highest value belts that you can get in comparison with a tier 11 HP amplification belt. You technically cannot even make a belt that comes close to how much value this gives, because this is 20% health amp alone, not mentioning the 15% health, technically tier 12 chaos res, all res, and also you get 40% damage dampening when you need it, which is huge. So the belt is really recommended. And as for your rings, you want elemental damage, hit rate or attack speed, and projectile damage if you can get it. Your suffixes, you just want any resistances or stats that you need. If you want, you can go for overpower effect, as we have overpower in the Zodiac. Right, so next section is a Zodiac. So the Zodiac I've chosen to go with is the bottom right one here, which is the Magician tree. Actually not called Magician tree, but it's called the Dawn tree, but it has Magician in it. So we'll start with the specialization first. I have looked at all the other specializations, and I think that this is the only one that fits this build very well. One thing to note is that you cannot get projectile count on your Ogre Arrow. Stuff like this, Acrobat, stuff that gives you extra projectiles from the Zodiac, all those kind of stuff, they don't work. You can only get 4 projectiles on Ogre Arrow, so you cannot use this stuff. So we'll start with our specialization. So we take Convert Mana, Ease of Life, Overpower is great, some damage, and then we have some double maximized damage chance. We also have Uplift here. Now in the late game, when you get Shout of Power, you can unspec this and you can go for some more attack speed amplification. But until you have Shout of Power, which is a magic synth on your shout, you would run Uplift. In your second specialization, so you got some elemental penetration. You have Tempest, which gives you some attack speed and move speed when you move, and 100% damage when you stop moving for 1 second. You have some Strike Amp and some more Strike Amp. And for your third specialization, you have some Strike Amp, some attack speed amp, some HP amp, and you also have some HP absorb. This is a good quality of life. If you don't have it on your bow, you can take this. You don't need to take this. Your Alternative options are to go for Magician and drop either the HP amp or the HP absorb and take Magician, but it is very hard to get enough sustain to maintain this. I'm still unable to maintain Magician. So the rest of the Zodiac, pretty standard stuff: attack damage, attack speed, health, elemental damage. Pretty standard stuff. You adjust your Zodiac as you go when you get Runestones, Zodiac stones. But this is pretty standard stuff. But we will quickly go over it so you guys can see exactly what I am running. Feel free to pause the video on any of these Zodiacs just to get an idea of where I've gone for my build. That's 5, 6. Where's 6? 6 is over here. So attack speed, health, a little bit of poison damage, some damage against elites. So you'll want to adjust your Zodiac to fit your Zodiac stones that you find, which is why my Zodiac is the way it is. You have blind rate, which comes from your Relic. So I do recommend taking that Relic that gives you blind, because you get 10% damage amp here, and some good quality nodes against blinded enemies as well, and some damage when your stats are 200 and higher, and some projectile damage, some HP amplification, and then you have your two-handed damage nodes, and then finally over here you have some more double maximized damage, double damage chance. So that is the Zodiac. So next section is charms. Next section, you would want something similar to this as your Chaos Star, but it's basically whatever you can afford to buy on the auction house or trade or craft yourself. The bonuses that we want in the end game are Castor, because it gives you elemental damage amplification and damage taken decrease, and also gives you some resistances and elemental damage. And your second bonus you want is Leo, but you can also go for the 20% bonuses on a lot of these if you like. Any tier 6 charm gives 20% by itself, so you can grab Hamal. Vesper is also really good. You can go for 40% Vesper bonus if you want. It's just to get both this 15% amp as well as Castor 15% amp, you need tier 8 charms and tier 8 Chaos Star in every slot. It's not easy to do. So until then, you can go with whichever bonuses that are relevant to your setup. So I've managed to make this, which is half Castors, half Leos. And most of my charms I've gone with at least tier 6 charms, because a tier 6 charm will give the bonus by itself. If it's rare. If it's rare, it's 20%. If it's legendary, you'll get a little bit more. So we've got maximize damage, flat damage, maximize damage chance, maximize damage, percent damage, damage with a 2-hand, maximize damage, damage with a 2-hand, health, maximize damage, and hit rate is also alright, and some maximized damage. Those are your charms. So the Relic. So the relics, I've tested a few relics. The mental stimulation is still the best relic, although it has the downside of damage taken to increase. It also has a good passive where you get your blind rate to enable you to take those Zodiac points, including the 10% damage amp. So that's your main relic that you should use. This will give you the most damage out of any relic. Your secondary relic you want to go for is Hamal, because you get the passive for... Yeah, that's the wrong relic. There it is. Alright, there we go. Something was wrong. So, no, this is the right relic. I just had the wrong bonus on. It gives you some poison pen, some poison damage, and also this is not bad. If you run out of energy, you can use this one. Gives you some poison damage. I don't really use it. Your third relic is just by choice, but those are the two main relics that you want to run. So the mental stimulation will still give you the most damage out of any relic. So now this is the crafting section. So now I'm going to go into explaining the crafts and how to do them. So your most important pieces to start with are your pierce count bow, your pierce count quiver, and your mana gain on hit gloves. Those are your three main difficult crafts. Most of the other crafts are fairly simple, but in terms of the pierce count bow, the fastest way to get a pierce count bow is to use Alyssa essences and fix the pierce count, because it's the only way you can fix the pierce count. Pierce count chance is less than 1%, 0.7%, so you can magic roll and rare roll it, but it will take you a long time, and it will be very difficult to get a high tier attack speed or HP absorb mod alongside it. So I do recommend going for Alyssa crafts and just kind of taking whatever you get, do some remove add with your Alyssa craft and try to land something good. But that's mostly how I've crafted my bow and my quiver, is just by fixed crafting pierce count and kind of remove adding until I get something that is acceptable on both the other two prefix mods, and then afterwards you can just suffix burst until you get attack damage at a good tier. The suffix, you only care about this attack damage. There's nothing really other good that is good on the suffix, only poison damage and poison penetration, but the chances of getting those is so low that you would just prefer to prioritize getting this, or at least a decent tier of this alongside one of those mods. You can also grab, like, these are two dead mods, but you can also grab some resistances or some resistances on a suffix. And same with this, you just want resistances, elemental penetration or elemental damage if you can. So it's not that complicated to craft. Just go for Alyssa craft until that's really the only way I've done it. You can, for the gloves, this is a little bit more of a complicated craft. So this is a double influence. You don't need to start with double influence. You can go just for single influence and just guarantee your mana gain on hit, and then just burst some okay suffixes with resistances. But if you do, you will want to go for a double influence craft later, so you can get attack speed amplification on the suffix. The way that you would make this is, first you would need two pairs of gloves that are exact same base. It needs to be armor dodge. You can't transfer to different bases. So you get two gloves, same base, preferably same level, but the rule is you can partial transfer to a same base level, but you can't transfer. You can transfer upwards, but you cannot transfer downwards. So you can transfer to 132 to 132, 132 to 133, and so on, but you cannot transfer 133 down to 132. So the way you would craft these is you would first have first gloves that can roll mana gain on hit. Get your mana gain with a nice tier with some good prefixes. Expand the item to six mods. The suffixes don't matter. Your second gloves would be the influence that can roll attack speed amplification with 6 mods. Doesn't need anything on it, just any 6 mods. And then you would transfer over these gloves and hope that you keep all 3 of your prefixes. If you keep all 3 of your prefixes and you're happy with it, on your receiving gloves you can just suffix burst until you get attack speed amplification. Pretty simple. What else? So everyone already knows how to make a +3 chest piece. I said same approach. You +3 chest piece, and then you get your, if you wanted to do a double influence craft, it will be the same approach as I explained with the gloves, except you'd have a second chest piece that can roll HP amplification, which is armour influence. This video has actually ended up being way too long. We're already past 15 minutes, so I'm just gonna hurry it up. Most of these crafts, so for boots, the way I crafted this was to get the 3 prefixes together that I'm happy with. Just guarantee high movement speed, take whatever projectile damage and whatever mod hit rate. Hit rate is good because you can craft it into attack speed. HP is good, or projectile damage. And then burst your suffixes afterwards. So rings, you would also do the same thing. These are a relatively simple craft. Most people should be able to figure out how to craft the rings. Just go for your prefixes first. Try to guarantee your elemental damage or your attack speed high, and then grab 2 more prefixes that are good alongside it, and then burst your suffixes afterwards until you're happy. Amulet, same kind of concept. It's a pretty simple craft. Start with the poison damage high tier with 2 mods that you're happy with. House or elemental damage, anything works. And then afterwards you just burst your suffixes with resistance or stats. If you want to go for an influence craft, just craft it on the influence with the suffix mod that you want, and then burst it on. And that should cover everything for crafting. So your options in scaling in late game, you have two directions you can go in. The first direction is you can go for your all-in on the double damage, which I have not done. I have got some double damage, triple damage chance, but I haven't gone all in on it because I don't think it's worth it until your double damage chance is very high and your maximized damage chance is very high. So if I was able to hit double damage, maximized damage across all my charms, I probably would go more into double damage, but as it is, I haven't been able to do that. So this is the setup I've been able to do with the numbers I've been able to get, which is around 180 million, usually around 150 million in clear setup. So, and alternatively, there are multiple ways to build this build. I've just gone for non-crit because non-crit does quite well at the moment. So you can also, I've seen people build the build as crit, so which would be an entirely different setup. I'm not going to get into it, but it is also quite good as crit. So now we'll get on with some gameplay with some 134 maps and a 141 map. Enjoy.